All right, good evening. Welcome to the October 2nd Oregon Public Defense Commission work group meeting. It looks like we just have two. Oh, there's Rob. I thought you had a meeting. That's great. So it's just the three of us so far.
I did League of Oregon Cities conferences today, but I just realized from 3 to 4:30 was the inspirational keynote speaker, and I don't need any inspiring. I'm pretty inspired.
There you go. Okay. And I was before you joined, I was telling Susan and Ken it is the top of the ninth inning with one out, and the Cubs are winning 3-1. And I'm over here having a heart attack, but it is what it is. Okay, so the first thing, I don't know if you got.
Oh, Philippe is here.
Philippe, great. I don't know if you got Mona's email that she sent a couple of hours ago that has some spreadsheet information specifically regarding the expenses related to various different scenarios, attorney's fees, expert witnesses, etc. I don't know if you had a chance to take a look at those.
Opening it now.
And Ralph plans to put those up and to go through them. I think.
Oh, good. That's
for
great.
you to have at your disposal because there's a lot of information there, for after the meeting.
No, that's great. I was trying to pull it up and I was having a little bit of trouble doing that. So that's fantastic. Okay, so maybe we'll just start with Ralph then, walking us through the information that he sent to us. Are you there, Ralph?
I am. I'm trying to.
Okay.
It keeps switching between my Surface camera, which is closed, and my other camera. There we go.
Great.
I apologize. I have a PowerPoint presentation, and we can go through the PowerPoint, or we can look at the slide, look at the information. If you can open up the information, then I can refer to that. I apologize. This is a lot of information, and I apologize for it being so late. I took a couple days off this last weekend, and when I came back, they had a ton of information that we spent the last day and a half trying to put in a comprehensible manner that would try and give you the information that you all were requesting. So that's what it is. It is a lot of information to go through, but I think it shows where money is going and where and why it's going there somewhat. I mean, we can't answer detailed questions very well, but we'll do our best. Kristen McClellan is our subject matter expert. She is the lead analyst for the pre-authorized expense unit. So if there's a technical question or something that I can't answer, I'm going to ask her to chime in, and she'll be able to do better answer this stuff for me, for y'all as well. So here's the PowerPoint presentation. Mona, if you go to the next slide, please. So on this presentation, and we'll make this available to you as well. We just go over the quick explanation of terms, LAB, reduction, court mandated expense, pre-authorized expense, the fiscal year stuff. And this is just basically a reiteration of the things we've talked about a few times, but just so that we have a common understanding of what we're all talking about.
Can I ask a quick question, Ralph?
Yes, sir.
For court mandated expense, like in that bucket, is that a bucket that was determined internally at OPDC, or is that something? Is that term of art more technical than everything that was put in that bucket?
I don't really have the court mandated expense was here when I got here in 21.
I can answer that if you want me to. So we used to have one big budget, and I can't remember what year. It might have been 21. It might have been 19. It was the legislature that divided it up into buckets, and the court mandated expense is a legislative bucket.
Okay, thank you.
And we try to keep just things that don't require a PAE, a pre-authorized expenditure, and things that, so we'll get court orders, and we try and pay them out of there. Right now we have hourly attorney costs, interpreters, and stuff that don't need pre-authorized expense. And the only psych that should be being paid out of there is the psych that's performed by the Oregon State Hospital. All the other psychology stuff goes into the pre-authorized expense, and we have them do a request for that. Expenditures, same timeline, the 15.82%, that was an explanation of what we were trying to do. And then just the statement, OPDC will continue to fund other travel expenses with no change to policy, mileage, lodging, and airfare, just so folks were aware of that. We're not talking about cutting any of that. Next slide, Mona. This was again a regurgitation of a previous slide, just to talk about, I mean, this is what happened. This is what we're expecting to see with an increase. That's, I mean, that's just information we already talked about. I just want to keep it as part of the conversation that what's driving this entire discussion. Next slide, more. For today's discussion, you sent a book of information that includes an adult summary sheet, a chart that describes case types, PAE, criminal, juvenile, and civil expenditures, and court-mandated expense attorney expenditures. When we last talked at the commission meeting, the commission expressed a desire to see everything broken down by case types, just so we can see what it was. And the adult summary sheet is it looks at so would you, let me ask this for clarification. Would you rather see the sheets or would you rather see the PowerPoint?
I think whatever distills it, whatever is easiest for us to digest. It was a lot of information in the sheets, and if there are highlights that you have in your PowerPoints, that's probably more effective.
So I have just kind of talking points in the PowerPoint to refer to the sheets. So I can put my PowerPoint to the side and I can focus and I can share the sheets if that's a better view for you all. Again, it's a lot of stuff, and I don't want to go through every single sheet and not, because that's too much information. But there are highlights that I'd like to get across for this.
I think that would be most helpful. I mean, I found myself through the sheets just scrolling for kind of what I thought were the highlights, which were really the sorry, my phone is going crazy right now. I need to figure out how to turn it off. The PAE expenses related to C misdemeanors and I'm sorry, misdemeanors and C felonies, and court specifically evaluations and other type expenses, and whatever other highlights that you think we really should draw our attention to.
I've sent a request to Mona, and I think it's working to share. So I asked to share, and I think she's probably working on that right now. Okay, she says I can share now. Okay. So this is the adult summary sheet for, and this comes off our PAE stuff.
Can you make it slightly larger
To
to 100% maybe? That's great. Thanks.
yes. So we use a time frame for just the last biennium, the expenses that we paid out. And again, this is for just adult criminal expenditures now. And the columns right here, these first two columns here are for contracted attorneys or contract vendors. These last two columns here are our hourly providers in relation to the cases that way. We have the amount we paid out, the number of distinct cases, again, hours paid, money paid out for hourlies, distinct cases, and then the sums. The reason we put this here is because just to see that when you look at the numbers here, the numbers are like, oh, geez, that's huge. What are we doing? Well, when we get into the other sheets, it gets more granular and we start talking about it more. But the takeaway from this one is basically investigation for fees and enhanced. And you'll notice that investigation for contracts was 13 million on 9,000 cases. And then for the hourly cases, there is $2.3 million and for 1,100 cases, right, that we paid for the 2 years. You'll notice investigation fees enhanced, these are THIP cases. So when you look at, you'll notice that there aren't any THIP cases for the contractor providers, but you'll see that we paid $7 million for 1,200 cases in enhanced investigation fees. Now, the thought is that that we will incur natural savings by ending THIP, because even if we still have hourly 2,400 cases or so, we're still not going to be paying this increased amount. We're going to be paying something lower. So it should achieve natural savings there. Mr. Harris.
Thanks. So one question for you, Ralph. Under the first column, contract, you're talking about all lawyers that have contracts. I'm assuming that's $13 million. Does that include their flat monthly fees and their contracts and some hourly rates that, like, because consortia contract lawyers will get investigators by the hour. So does that bucket include both of those costs?
No, sir. This is just pre-authorized expense ones. So this doesn't contain anything that's in the contracts.
Oh, because it says contract. I thought you said contract lawyers under that first column.
Oh yeah,
So like
the contractor
consortium lawyers.
providers on a contractor, which would be the consortiums, when they do a pre-authorized expense for investigative services, it would go through the pre-authorized expense method and show up here.
Yeah, so that's what I figured. But the question is, we have contracts, right? Where we provide a flat fee for a lot of nonprofits who have investigators on board?
Yes, sir.
Is that cost
that number is not included in here, no.
Okay.
These are just hourly fees.
And can I ask, are the investigator, and sorry if this was answered, are the nonprofit contractors included within the first column? So, you know, the psychiatric and polygraphic and all of the expenses they incur, are they included in this, or is this just consortium?
These would be non-for-profits as well. If they put in a pre-authorized expense for these services, it would come through here.
All right. And do you know what the flat investigation fee that's provided to those, like what that is roughly? And I know I'm putting you on the spot with like a needle in a haystack. So
flat for contractors, the flat investigation fee for the year, I believe, is about $90,000. Is what we reimburse the provider for that. So they get $90,000 a year for each investigator, give or take. I mean, don't hold me to that number, but it started at 75, then we increased it 8.8%, and it's got another 6.4% increase now. So it's about roughly $90,000 somewhere around there. And if somebody else is listening and gets upset, I'm sorry, but that's the ballpark.
Thank you.
And the hourly rate here was $50 an hour and 55 for Spanish speaking folks, or dual language, which is mainly Spanish speakers here. The rate on the hourlies for the enhanced investigation was 75 and then 80 on this other one. That's why this amount was so much more for investigation and the enhanced on the hourly column. Ms. Vandenberg. You're muted. Still muted.
If we're going down the object description,
Mhm.
I want to make sure I understand what you said. Some of these categories are only consortia, and some of these categories are consortia and nonprofits.
No. All of these object descriptions will apply to anybody who does a pre-authorized expense, whether
Yes,
they
but-
consortia or not-for-profits.
Yeah, but I thought I heard you say that nonprofits never put in a pre-authorized expense request for investigators because they've got them on staff, whereas they sometimes put in pre-authorized expense requests for, I don't know, mitigation or psychological fees. So that would mean that some of these never include nonprofits and some of these sometimes include nonprofits, right?
Yes, and a not-for-profit can get investigation, but if the investigation needs for that area are greater than what they have the capacity to do, they will request to get hourly investigative services.
So there's basically no way for us to know from this spreadsheet or chart how much of these expenses are going to consortia and how much of them are going to nonprofits, because it just depends.
Again, I'm not gonna say that the data team couldn't do that, but I would have to do an individual vendor type query, and I'm not sure that we have the flags on there to say whether it's consortium or not-for-profit when we go in the system. We just get the provider, we get the attorney, and then the request from the provider. So it would have to be some serious matching between this provider, where it sits and everything, and everywhere else. And then we
But
also,
we can probably assume that the investigation fees are mostly consortia, but we
yes,
can't assume that about, say, psychiatric and psychological fees.
that is 100% correct. We can assume the majority of investigation in this column is attributed to consortium.
All right, so
It's
I just want to understand, whether we're doing apples and oranges here. And I think I get that it depends and that there's no easy way to sort it out anymore.
But I think your point is, which is the point of my question. The
Okay.
one category where you're not lumping contracts together are the investigation costs because of the way the contracts are featured. I would suggest what would be helpful for me is to add a line on here that says something about, contract, built-in contract fees or something for investigators.
But that's not on there. That's what he's saying. So the $90,000 a year for nonprofits are not included in this number at all. These are only
Right.
PAE requests.
Right. That's why I'm saying add a line in there.
Oh, you want to add it in? I thought you were saying take it out. Okay.
No, I think you need to add it in. So like to Susan's point, the rest of these are combined at contractors, but that's the one item that mainly is not. Others may have some blended as well, but
What
Well,
about mitigations? Do nonprofits do their own mitigations or do they hire out?
they
Well, let me
hire out.
Yeah, let me ask that. That's a good question. Here's kind of the follow-up. Where does the $90,000 a year payment that's allocated for investigators and nonprofits, what bucket does that come out of?
That comes out of the adult trial division. the
Okay.
contractor one. It comes out of adult trial, it comes out of juvenile, and it comes out of the PCA.
Okay,
PCRP,
that's helpful.
which are different division, different buckets of money.
Okay, I want to make sure that it wasn't somehow hidden in here. So that's great. So it would be helpful to have that number, but for the purposes of the discussion that we're having today about PAE and court mandated expenses, the $90,000 a year for investigators is really not relevant to this because that's not something that we would be needing to address.
Correct.
Okay, and then let me ask another, kind of take a step back. So you said that the enhanced investigation fees are for THIP, which I think we all understand, $7.2 million roughly, and that because THIP is no longer going forward, a certain percentage of that, a very large percentage of that, is a natural savings.
Yes.
It looks to me like if I saw the numbers from the second slide, we've got a shortfall of 1,871,592 from court mandated expenses and 3,526,337 from PAE expenses that we need to make up.
Yes.
So isn't that it? I mean, isn't that basically, no, I'm serious. Isn't that basically, I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, but I mean, the 7.2 million, it's not, we're still going to have some of those expenses because we have ongoing THIP cases, but we're not, you know, it's going to be a much, much smaller number. So am I wrong that basically we can recapture that money because THIP is going away?
That would, I believe that would attack some of it, but basically, if the cases hold to what the forecast is and everything else, that would be a good jumping off point. Yes.
Okay, that's really helpful information. I mean, I know it's hard to quantify what that number would be, but my guess is it's, probably conservatively, you could say 2/3 of those expenses are going to go away. I mean, maybe not, but it certainly is not going to be half. I mean, just because we don't have that many of those cases that remain open.
And some of the bigger cases that we have in the THIP are actually taking longer, costing more. I mean, it's a give and a take. I believe, again, the natural savings that we've accomplished by THIP going away and having those reductions, we did increase investigation rates some, but not enough to offset that. And there's also other areas that we're looking at as far as efficiencies when we were in the reactive mode of trying to address the crisis and approving everything as it came in. Now that we've had a chance to breathe, we're actually applying higher levels of scrutiny. Instead of just blanketing everybody gets 40 hours, we're saying, no, you can have 20 hours. If you need additional hours for psych or something else, then you can come back and justify the reason why you have that. We're also doing things as far as geographical proximity. We're not just pulling anybody from anywhere to come and do things. We're saying, look, if you're in Medford, let's find some Medford providers. Let's find some attorneys that can handle cases down there, or stick it over with the state trial office and try and find those efficiencies that way. We're not just shotgunning anymore, which is where we were at from about a year ago, to just to try and stem the tide. I think we're at a point now where we can apply higher levels of scrutiny, be more methodological about it, and really start looking at things. Now, to just address things like the high levels of psychological stuff and everything else, it doesn't address that. We still have to put some barriers and guidelines on stuff like that. But again, that's something else we can consider down the road, or the commission can consider down the road.
Okay.
Commissioner Knapp.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say I was really happy to hear that, Ralph, and that I really think that what you're going to see is with some parameters and some boundaries that these amounts go down, because just looking at these, I get the feeling that an economic incentive does drive some of these fees. For example, when you look at the investigation under THIP fees, so making sure that there's guardrails in this, and making sure that there's some scrutiny. I would maybe throw this out there just as a kind of future thought experiment, but the bringing some of these in-house for consortia and for consortia nonprofits, like the psychiatric psychological assessments. I know that at the Bronx Defenders we did those in-house, and that is this is a huge budget, right? This is a huge amount of budget, that, you know, that might be a place where those fees and those cost savings could be even further. But I'm confident that you're going to find those savings within this with just a little bit of scrutiny. So thank you.
Thank you.
So with that, I agree. And with that, I wonder, are there specific policies that the agency could draw up to, as an amendment to our current policies to kind of, make some of those things more formal instead of just, oh, we're going to apply more scrutiny. What does that actually look like in reality? And should that be a policy amendment? I think what we've heard from other from commissioners during other meetings and a little bit today is that we would be open to considering those based on your expertise and your knowledge about what you think would be helpful. I know one of the other things that other discussions that I've had with, and Commissioner Harris and Mandelberg had with Director Santrigan also, that correlates with this is having some policies that are put in place about the appointment of counsel and how counsel are appointed to cases where the cases can't be taken under contract, so that we can start, as you say, not shotgunning. So that, there's a kind of a hierarchy of how to appoint counsel. First you look at adjacent counties who are under contract, can they take those cases? Then can you, if that can't happen, can you get hourly lawyers that are close in proximity, et cetera, kind of a hierarchy, which will also achieve, I think, a great deal of natural savings in the court mandated expense category, because we won't have, like Southern Oregon lawyers taking cases on the Northern coast. I mean, that's an extreme example, but that doesn't happen because it's the kind of the other way around probably, but still, I think that the next logical step in this is having the agency bring some of those policies to us for consideration, where you think that there would be some meaningful savings and natural savings that would accrue. And also, I think it's helpful too to provide some guidance to staff about how to approve PAE expense requests and how to appoint counsel. If there are specific policies about that, it'll be easier for staff, and it'll be easier for new staff coming in to be trained on that as well. Does that sound like a reasonable approach?
Commissioner Nash, Chair Nash, it does sound like a reasonable thing. We actually, again, I mentioned some of the efficiencies that we have been doing by cutting the initial amount of hours down, reviewing all requests for clear justifications, and again, for out-of-state providers, informing them that the preferability for in-state providers and requiring additional justifications, details that says why you need this.
No, I think that's great. I'm suggesting that we formalize it in policies.
Yeah, okay. I mean, we can do that because so some of it already is in policy. We can just reiterate it and talk more about it. Some of the other discussion points that we were going to talk about was encouraging. I mean, we could put things in like encouraging video, encouraging geographical proximities, what we talked about, maybe mirroring some of the CJA panel stuff about case limits and budgets. I mean, this is pie in the sky type things where you establish a budget. When you look at the CJA stuff, that stuff is like really dialed into, limits for providers, limits for here, there's the case limits, budgeting, which again, it's a lot of work. But one final thing that'll add to this, and I can stop sharing this if you'd like me to.
Sure. That's very helpful information, by the way. Your work was not in vain. I really appreciated all of those numbers. It really helped me inform I mean, it's taken this long to see the actual number of the THIP expenses and say, oh, hey, wait a minute, that's a lot of money and we may be okay. So that it was all very, very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
The one other thing that I'd like to mention is that we got notification today or this morning that we have to prepare 5% across the board cuts for the agency.
Yep.
That's really going to start tapping into a lot of this stuff, which it equates to about $36 million, which is a huge. And and just to put it in a more colorful picture, they took a holdback in adult, juvenile, and PCRP, which means that we would essentially have to give that up, and if they took that money away, that's like 16-17 million out of the contract areas. It's another 100 million, 5%. That's 5 or 6 million out of PAE additional, and
How can we, and maybe this is a question for Ken, how can we do that when we have to meet a caseload? I mean, we're constitutionally mandated to provide attorneys for people. We can't take a cut across the board. I mean, what is,
I just got back and I heard that question, Chair. So
okay.
apologies. So, I mean, I think the only answer to that right now is that every agency, regardless of kind of what they fund, is asked to do this work. But then I think after that work is done, that's where these you have discussions about the very thing that you just mentioned. One thing I'll at least mention as an illustration, which I think is a positive thing, is that when CFO, for example, was working on the targeted cuts that we would potentially have to make just in the governor's exercise, he explicitly did not include a desire for or direction to make cuts to these buckets that we're talking about right now. That does make it more difficult on one level, because then you have to look at administration where there's a smaller amount of money. However, I think there is some recognition of what you just mentioned. And these general instructions, they try to make them apply to everybody, but then that leads to discussions later. And so we'll have to take this first step now. And part of it, I think, too, is making our case for how devastating those cuts would be to these different buckets.
Okay, that's helpful. Also, I mean, we had touched on a very brief, conversation yesterday about how thin we are in the administration and how much that is really impacting our ability to, our operational ability. And so, cutting that when we've already basically taken the cut there is going to be very difficult. I mean, I understand where we are in the state, and every agency is feeling the same way, but I mean, we're in a unique position because we have work we have to do. Okay, well, thank you. That's helpful. Okay. Let me look at my agenda. All right. We actually, oh, look at that. We have a quorum. So we have a quorum of voting members. So we can move on. I did ask that we notice the criminal attorney performance standards as a possible action item based on the commission meeting that we had last time, where we gave direction. Mr. Arndt provided that feedback. We didn't have any questions. We said the performance standards looked good, and I thought, great, maybe we can pass them tonight, and so that we can put that to rest, or not. But I mean, we can have a discussion about that, but that's why I noticed it that way, just in case we were able to come to that point. So with that, let's turn it over to Mr. Arndt, who can talk about the criminal attorney performance standards and the iteration now where they are. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Nash. Good evening. We had a meeting last month. We went through the new criminal attorney standards, performance standards. There was a change. The biggest change is the language change that we discussed during that meeting, related to what had previously been called best practices. I think somebody came up with the idea of calling them commentary. We've adopted that language. We shored up some of the language around ensuring that it's very clear that the commentary is not meant to establish some sort of baseline as to what an attorney should be doing in every case, or a baseline of if you do not do these things, you are somehow not fulfilling your ethical or other duties as an attorney. It seems to be much more clear to me. I don't know if everyone has had an opportunity to review and digest the new draft. But if you have, I would encourage the commission to vote on this.
Commissioner Manenberg.
I was one of the ones who was objecting to the way it was done before, so I'll, I'll be the first to weigh in. And I did take a look at what you've done, and I'm fine with it. I think it was a graceful way of making those points. And my main problem, other than calling it best practices, with the way that you had it before was that your explanation was in the cover memo and not in the policy. So the language, now that you have it in the policy, I like that it's called commentary, and I'm fine with the way you explained it. So I'm not going to make any more objections.
Commissioner Leininger.
There was a sentence in here that I thought was particularly helpful in clarifying the role of the commentary. You said OPDC recognizes that in any given case, some standards and commentary might be inapplicable and even mutually exclusive. And I just like the fact that you avoid any risk that someone could say the commentary is binding, is a separate source of basis for discipline. So I thought it was well done. I agree with Commissioner Manenberg that it's a big step forward compared to what we saw at our last meeting.
I agree, and I really appreciate all of your work and appreciate your taking, you get a bunch of lawyers who are who are second guessing everything that you do. And I appreciate how professional you've been in taking that feedback and then turning it into something that we all, have been able to agree on. And it's very good work and very, very, very helpful. And I hope that that practitioners also find it very helpful.
Thank
All
you.
right. So with that, I will entertain a motion to adopt the criminal defense performance standards dated. I realize the document itself says draft July, but I want to be specific. It's the document that is attached to our agenda dated October 2nd, 2025.
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
All right. And Mona, can you do a roll call?
You bet. Chair Nash,
Yes.
Vice Chair Mandelberg,
Yes.
Chair Lipscomb,
Yes.
Chair Nab, or I'm sorry, Commissioner. You can tell haven't done this in a while. Commissioner Nab,
Yes.
Commissioner Harris,
Yes.
and Commissioner Leininger.
Yes.
Thank you.
Wonderful. And speaking of quorums of voting members, I should have announced at the beginning of the meeting. I learned late this afternoon that we have 3 new commissioners who've been appointed to the commission, 2 effective today. Our 2 non-voting members have been appointed by the governor's office effective today. And they are Caitlin Plummer from Lane County Public Defender and, oh gosh, I can't remember Paige's last name. Parker, right?
Oh, Haley Olson.
Haley. Oh, I'm sorry. Totally wrong name. I am the worst person with names ever. So that is not right. Pretend I didn't say that at all. Haley Olson, who is an investigator from Eastern Oregon. And our voting person is appointed effective November 20th. And that is Stephanie Engelson who used to be at YRJ and is now no longer practicing, but is on the Portland School Board. I think she's no longer practicing. She was no longer practicing when we originally interviewed her, but that was 9 months ago. So it's taken a long time.
One of the things that we're going to discuss at the governance committee meeting next week is putting together a handbook for new commissioners. Hopefully, I'm hopeful that we can have at least a draft of it ready by the end of November. I think at least even a draft would be useful. So for all of you who are here tonight, and Philippe, especially you, because you're the newest, if if you could send Mona suggestions of what kinds of things you might have wanted to know about the commission, about state government, about anything that you think would have helped you hit the ground running better. And even some of us who joined a year and a half ago, I can still remember feeling very up in the air about a lot of things. So if you could send those suggestions to Mona, that would be really helpful, and we can at least put a draft together in time for these new folks.
I think for sure, I mean, this, you probably already know this and it's already in there, but as much guidance as there is from the Governmental Ethics Commission about public meetings and communication, which is always changing and always difficult, but I think that would be helpful. Also, Commissioner Harris can probably help with suggestions because he just joined a public body and had to start from the ground up, and it might be helpful. He can talk about the things he wish he would have known about that before he started his job.
For sure, and luckily he's on the governance subcommittee, so.
Yeah, that would be great. All right. Okay, well, that's wonderful. Now we'll move right back to the next performance standards, which are the delinquency attorney performance standards. And I bet you're going to get a lot of the same feedback that you and the feedback you've already received, I can see really helped inform how you drafted the delinquency standards too. So I really appreciate that. So
Yeah, that was very helpful to get the feedback. In fact, you may recall we had intended earlier to introduce these last month, but after seeing the feedback on the criminal standards, we didn't want to push these forwards without resolving the issues that were in the criminal standards. We took the feedback that we got last month, we put those into the delinquency standards and drafted those, drafted edits to those and completed them. I would encourage the commission to maybe take some time with these. I know we got them to you, I believe it was last week was probably the first time you've seen them. I think it's probably too soon for anybody to have any real substantive commentary on these or anything like that. We may want to push these to next month. We currently have an open period for almost like a notice and comment rulemaking kind of thing where we have these out to the provider community to look at and provide us feedback on what they find helpful, what they don't find helpful, where they want clarification. And I think that's open for another couple of weeks.
that's great. I was going to ask about that, what the provider feedback has been. Hey, one of the things that I think is really, really important in here that I mean, sorry, I'll finish my thought first, is to really talk about the difficulty of representing youth, specifically related to parental involvement. And that's in there. There is some information about that, but I would like to, I would suggest that it's kind of embedded in other paragraphs, that there really be kind of a separate bullet point about that. It's so difficult because representing kids, you have parents who are, both wanting to make sure that their child takes responsibility for whatever it is that they think that, they have done. Also sometimes wants to make sure their kids don't get in huge amounts of trouble. Sometimes those are at the same time. Sometimes they're very different. And parents always want to know everything that's going on with the case. And kids aren't really free to exert confidentiality in the same way that adults are because of that pressure in their, with their parents, and it's a completely understandable dynamic. I mean, you want to know what's going on with your kid as a parent, and you also want to make sure as a parent, there's always this fear that parents have that their authority or their control over their child is going to be undermined by the lawyer. And so it's a really delicate balance representing kids, and lawyers get it wrong a lot. There are lots of lawyers that never meet with their kids alone, which is a huge problem. And then, there are some lawyers who are way on the other end of the extreme and never meet with parents, which also is a problem. That can cause a breakdown in the attorney-client relationship, because then what happens is the parent forces the kid to fire the lawyer. I've seen that happen too. And so I think just kind of providing some guidance about how to navigate that, I think would be really helpful, because as I said a few meetings ago, when I read these performance standards, I really read them as kind of a how-to for new lawyers in a lot of ways. This is how to represent someone. So having that information in there, I think, would be helpful to practitioners. Rob? You're muted.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry about that. I'm trying to click all these buttons. From what I remember, PCRP includes some delinquency cases. Is that correct? Okay.
That is correct.
So I will tell you, I don't intend on voting for any standards unless it sets out separate additional standards for our PCRP lawyers. Period.
Maybe you should talk a little more about why. I mean, I think that's a fair point, but I think you should flesh that out a little bit.
So PCRP was initiated with Jennifer 2012, 2013, something like that, maybe 2014. And it was a pilot program, and it was supposed to be rolled out in 5 counties. Eventually it went to 7 or 8, and was supposed to be, if it proved to be valuable, it was going to be rolled out statewide, but it never did. It stalled out. So you have about 40% of the juvenile lawyers, I think it's about 40% of the juvenile lawyers in this state are under PCRP, which is Parent-Child Representation Program, which was supposed to be enhanced. They were paid extra. I think they're on average $30,000 or $40,000 a year extra per caseload in this state. So they're being paid quite a bit more. They're given extra resources, and their caseloads are capped. This is all good. It was a great pilot program, but eventually it's no longer a pilot program. No one talks about it. No one talks about any additional standards. In fact, last time I saw it says, well, spending a third of your time talking to your clients is not reasonable. It should be more like 10%. So we have a program called a pilot, no longer really a pilot. It's just a 2-tiered system in this state, where some counties have PCRP with extra money and extra resources and lower caseloads, and other counties do not. And I don't think they should be held to the same standards then. I mean, if this is a pilot program, we're trying to do metrics showing that the results were better for kids, like dates to reunification, or better, better outcomes, better mental health treatment, whatever the better outcomes were going to be. And so I don't think you can use the same standards, because we expect more. If we're paying $30,000, $40,000 a year, we've given extra resources, we should pay. And if it is the same standards, why are we paying more? Why aren't we paying the same amount? And so I know this is sort of a third rail of juvenile law in this state, but we need to talk about this, and we need to have, maybe we make them all juvenile. Maybe we make them under the same program with the same standards and spread the money out between all of them. And some people get a $20,000 a year increase. I mean, that's not unreasonable. But it also, I think it should be alarming for us that we have 2 standards of juvenile justice in this state. This is not a pilot program. It's been going on for well over a decade. And I don't even, do we have any metrics? Can anyone tell me? Are we measuring the difference?
Just the 1 KPM, right? And that, but which, we've figured out is a good KPM. But I mean, your point is very well taken. And one of the other problems with PCRP is when you have counties that are geographically close, and one's a PCRP county and one isn't, it's really hard to attract juvenile practitioners to the non-PCRP counties, because they have to compete with the PCRP counties where you're paid more. So that's always been an issue, and the way that the commission has talked about that and the agency has talked about that is, we totally agree, and the idea is that we're going to expand it out to everybody. We're going to expand it out over all the counties. We want everyone to be PCRP, and of course that just hasn't come to fruition. And so I mean, I don't think we want to have the legislature take the money away, but to Rob's point, I mean, there has to be a differentiation between PCRP and non-PCRP, or else what's the, what are we doing? So, I mean, I have some thoughts about that, that I can kind of talk with you about separately, but I mean, there's PCRP practitioners that could talk about it too. Hey, one of the most obvious things that is different, or at least should be an expectation that's different, is that there are lots of meetings and other things that happen with DHS and with juvenile delinquency cases that your contract lawyers can't go to, but PCRP lawyers should go to. And those are things like, meetings at the schools, or that are related to IEPs maybe, or, meeting I don't even know what they call them anymore because it's been a long time since I've done dependency cases, but like family unification meetings and all kinds of things at DHS that contract lawyers just don't have the time to go to and can't go to because of the amount of time it takes, but that are super helpful for families and super helpful in representation of your kids, but it's not direct legal representation per se, right? But when the expectation always was for PCRP lawyers that if you're going to get paid this extra money and you're going to have reduced caseload, it's because you're doing more work on each individual case, and that's the more work that you're doing. You're going to all those case adjacent meetings. You're, when your client, if you have a parent client and they're getting kicked off of public assistance, you're going to go to the meeting to help them with the public assistance meeting to get back on public assistance, those types of things. So that's the way that back when I was doing back in the old days, that was the way I thought about that. But I talked to some of the PCRP counties and see what kind of what their thoughts are and what their expectations are, and of course the non-PCRP, like, what do we think they're supposed to be doing? Philippe?
I guess I wanted to just follow up on the idea that there wasn't any sort of comparator or study or data on this difference. I guess I'm pretty surprised that the agency is funding this program and not monitoring its successes, because how do you expect to get the legislature to pay for the continued expansion without the data that supports better outcomes? And I guess I'd be interested, I don't know, Ken, if you can speak to what the agency's thinking is on how that case is going to be made to the legislature, or what your strategic thought on PCRP is, because I'm relatively new to it, but I know it just seems like, just sitting out there, I agree with everything that was said so far, that you can't pay two different rates and expect two different levels of service and treat them the same.
So once upon a time, I was in a presentation, and I can't even tell you where it was. I only remember what the presentation was, where an executive director the person who was the executive director when PCRP was put into place, made a presentation about the outcomes. And one of the slides showed that children spent less time, no, there were fewer children entering foster care in PCRP counties. And I remember sitting there, and she specifically picked Lynn County, which was a PCRP county. And I remember sitting there thinking that's not why. I know that's not why. The reason there are fewer kids entering foster care had nothing to do with PCRP. It had to do with the fact that they had way understaffed they didn't have any foster homes. They had foster parents quitting in droves, and they could not fill the open positions for the protective service caseworkers. And I knew that because I practiced in that county. And I was like, that's why kids aren't entering foster care. It doesn't have anything to do with how great PCRP is. But okay, it's the, correlation doesn't equal causation thing. But I mean, I mean, you're right. We have to have some data points to measure this. So far, the legislature every time has continued to fund PCRP in these counties, but we have no ability to expand it. For that exact reason, we don't have any data. I don't know if I know Ken had to step out, so
No,
oh, there you are.
I
Okay.
was, yeah, and I heard Commissioner Knapp's question as well. I mean, I think you're right. We used to, up until 2017, release annual reports on PCRP looking at outcomes. And it has been suggested to me when I arrived that we begin looking at that again. I think on one level, the question that Commissioner Knapp brought up, I mean, this is the perfect time to start developing that strategy. We're about to move into budget build season for, it's hard to believe, but for 27-29, we're about to move into that process. And so I think part of formulating a strategy is also working hand in hand with you as commissioners as we develop what those pops should be. And if we prioritize a pop for PCRP, then we'll begin to work on what that strategy might be. I do worry going into 27 that it's going to be a very lean budget period. And so it might not be something that we can achieve, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't ask. Oftentimes the legislature, it takes multiple biennia to get something done. And so actually building the groundwork now is exactly what we should do. But I think this program seems similar to me to a program in corrections called the Family Sentencing Alternative Pilot Program that is able to show some of those savings. And whether I was very intrigued by your thoughts, Chair, on the causality for things like fewer foster days or quicker reunification. But I think that is usually a good argument to show if we have savings in other areas, then that might be something to justify, but we would certainly want to make sure that that relationship is true. But I do think there's a lot that we can do, but certainly we as staff are going to be looking to you all for some direction on how we prioritize which asks we make, because there are certainly a lot of things that we need within the system. And so that's what's going to be upcoming at our commission meetings as well, just as a heads up for you, Commissioner Knapp, as we begin to try to come up with that list.
Great. Thank you. Okay, so that, is there anything, sorry, Mr. Arnn, is there anything else you wanted to talk about with the delinquency performance standards tonight?
No, ma'am, but thank you for the
Okay.
feedback. I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Yeah. You're welcome. Then thank you for your hard work. And thank you for incorporating the adult defense standards into the delinquency standards. I know I already said that, but I really appreciate that. Okay, so we had also on the agenda to update discussion about the key performance metrics, but Ms. Freeman is out ill today, so we're not going to do that. So we will be able, unless there's anything, we can't have a big open discussion because we didn't notice it. So there may be other things that I would love to talk to you about, and there are in fact, but I can't because they haven't been noticed. So, so with that, we have a meeting in 2 weeks, and then we will discuss this at the October meeting, but we probably won't meet in November because we have the December meeting is very early in December, and we'll just meet in December. And we also have a work group in November. So if there's any leftover business we need to take care of, we can take care of it during the work group rather than during a commission meeting. But we'll firm that up when we have our meeting later this month. But with that, unless there's anything else that we want to talk about the items that have been noticed, we can adjourn early this evening. And my Cubs won, by the way. So yay. So there's that. So I'll be busy watching that on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday. Okay. All right. Well, thank you everyone for your time this evening, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Thank you
Have
all.
a good evening.